Fable. Part 1. The Situation. Enough. After 20 years, Jeff Shanley had experienced more than his fair share of the Silicon Valley, the hours, the traffic, the pretentiousness. It was time to make a change. To be fair, it wasn't really the work that Jeff had grown tired of. In fact, he had enjoyed an interesting and successful career. After a few jobs in high-tech marketing, at age 35 he co-founded a technology startup. 2 years later, he was fortunate enough to get demoted when the board of directors hired what they called a grown-up CEO. During the next 4 years, that CEO, Catherine Peterson, taught Jeff more about leadership, teamwork, and business than he could have learned in a decade of business school. When Catherine retired, Jeff left the company and spent the next few years working at a small consulting firm in Half Moon Bay, over the hills from the Silicon Valley. Jeff thrived there and was on the verge of becoming a partner. But during that time, he and his wife began to grow tired of trying to keep up with the Joneses, which happened to be the name of the family that lived in the overpriced bungalow next door. Jeff was definitely ready for a change. Where he would go and what he would do next was a mystery to him. He certainly didn't expect the answer to come via a phone call from his Uncle Bob. Bob. Robert Shanley had been the most prominent and diversified building contractor in the Napa Valley for 3 decades. Whether it was a winery, a school, or a shopping center, if it was being built in Napa, there was a decent chance that Valley Builders was involved in some significant way. Unfortunately for Bob, none of his kids was interested in taking over the family business, instead choosing to be restaurateurs, stockbrokers, and high school teachers. And that's why Bob called his nephew to see if he knew anyone who might be interested in running the company in a couple of years when Bob retired. It wasn't the first time that Bob had turned to his nephew for advice. Jeff had helped him on a few occasions in the past, and actually consulted to the executive team a year earlier on a substantial project around teamwork, which was one of the firm's values. Jeff had focused his efforts on building more effective teams at the highest levels of the company. Bob loved the work Jeff did, and often bragged about his nephew during family reunions, usually saying something to the effect of, "This boy is my best advisor." His cousins teased Jeff, pretending to resent their father's favoritism. Bob thought so much of Jeff that he had absolutely no expectation that his ambitious nephew in the exciting world of high-tech would ever be interested in working in construction, which is why he was so stunned when Jeff asked, "Would you consider hiring someone without industry experience? Someone like me?" Transition. Within the month, Jeff and Maureen Shanley had sold their tiny home in San Mateo and moved their 2 children and 1 dog to the northern end of Napa, the town, not the valley. Jeff's commute to the Valley Builders office was about 4 miles, and even if he drove the speed limit, it took just 7 minutes. It was during those minutes that Jeff experienced an initial wave of remorse. Though everything on the domestic side of his decision had been going well, learning the nuances of the construction industry proved to be more of a challenge than he expected. Or, more precisely, it was the lack of nuance that was the problem. Everything in construction seemed to come down to physical, material issues. Gone were the days of theoretical debates and pie-in-the-sky planning. Jeff now found himself learning about concrete matters having to do with everything from air conditioning to lumber to, well, concrete. But soon enough, Jeff not only got used to this new way of working, he actually came to prefer it. Straightforward conversations about tangible things may have been less sophisticated than high-tech, but they were also more gratifying. And he was learning more than he could have imagined from his uncle, who never finished college, but seemed to have a better understanding of business than many of the CEOs Jeff had worked with in technology. After 8 weeks of observation and learning, Jeff came to the conclusion that the move to Napa was the right one.